racism too, and how evil and bad it is, but they don't realize racism is actually normal and extremely common literally everywhere in the world. Like, Asians are racist to blacks, Mexicans are also racist to blacks are racist back to them. The whole reason why Stop Asian Hate lasted 2 weeks a few years ago, when that was trying to kick off, because they realized who was actually doing the Asian hate, because all these videos are coming out of these NWAs just attacking Asians non-stop, and I was like, well, okay, that stopped pretty quickly, didn't it? I've been seeing some Twitter posts every once in a while where there's even racism between African, like Nigerians versus I don't know what the Chadites. Well, what are the NWAs from Chad called? You know what? I don't really care because of how vast it is and how many tribes live there. Africans from the east look different than the Africans from the west. Like, the whole physiognomy kind of shit. And even some skin colors are darker than others. They pride themselves over being lighter skinned blacks. I mean, and hell, even the Indians have inter-racism too, that the whole caste system is in place based off skin color. And some Indians will cry because there is that gets hurt when you point that out. But the darker your skin, the lower on the rung that you are, and the darker, like the darkest of the dark, that's Dalit. Versus the really light, almost like tan, those are, the Brahmin. That's how their inter-racism plays. And that's normal. Now, would I like us to be able to get along, sing kumbaya, and not care about the skin color? Yes, that would be nice. If we lived in such a reality. But alas, that's not actually the case. But yeah, like, everyone's racist, and that's okay. But anyway, let's actually get into the video itself.
Racism. What greater way to celebrate people's differences than by using them as a cudgel with which to hate each other? Ironically enough, it's in racist circles that you will usually find the most diversity. They don't really care where you're from, just that you're racist.
That's basically the amalgamation retard station. Despite me being open, like not liking Inwas and like liking Mexicans and not liking Indians. Well, we did have one Indian, and then he got too pissed off when I started talking about India. So he didn't last very long. It's surprising how many mixed race and foreigners actually are in my community. I don't really have a problem with them, actually, because as long as they're in their country, I don't really care. I mostly have the problem when they're in my country, America. Even if they disagree with me, I still don't really care. I can get along with people if they disagree with me. My issue is when they're in my fucking country and causing problems for me and my family. That's where the problem lies. But I'm still surprised at how many still watch and are involved with the community. It's not like it's a lot. The vast majority of you guys see are white guys.
Which is surprisingly very inclusive, but that's inter-race racism. Racism between different races. What happens when everyone you live with and look at also look exactly like you? Well, that's when you get down to the nitty-gritty, real minute differences, like slight variations in head shape, which form the basis of castes and groups, from which you can safely hate each other. It's almost inspiring at how racism can flower in even the most unlikely of places, and that is what we're going to be looking at today. Different times/places where people couldn't find anyone else to hate, so they turned their attention inward. We'll start with Israel. Oh boy, racism in Israel in one video. What is this, Instagram Reels?
When I'm trying to beg an Israeli badly, Natalie Portman and my HB starts to talk about war crimes and international law. I do really like the Jewish edits though, when either they're speaking Hebrew and yelling and you can't really understand what they're saying.
But no, there's actually a pretty long-standing history of intra-race racism in Israel, and it's between the Ashkenazi Farah Jews to the darker Mizrahi Jews, even though they supposedly come from the same people. To give you an idea of how prominent this racism is that every single Prime Minister of Israel so far has been of Ashkenazi descent. They actually even had a woman, well, I think that's a woman, before they had...
Okay, this video is already going to be really spicy, but you know how recently with the whole Israel being such a hot topic, and specifically the Tiny Hat tribe being, criticized a lot more recently, you know how they keep on pointing out like witches you have long noses and hats and cast spells, and they're like, I wonder what that's about. The Tengu in Japan with the long noses and being devils, or Rumpelstiltskin and how he's got a long nose and tries to scam people out of things. Yeah, anyway, she definitely fits the witch description like a lot. She looks like she should be cast for the movie to play like the Wicked Witch of the West. She looks like she'd be cast as a witch in like the Wizard of Oz. Stereotypes exist for a reason.
They brown, which is somehow simultaneously more and less progressive than the United States. though that alone cannot be used to write them all off as intra-race racists. I think a better way would be to look at how the different groups are portrayed in media. For example, there's this painting by this Israeli artist that sums up the caricatures of the Mizrahi quite well. Are we seriously doing an I'm an artist from Israel and this is my art bit? Well, I guess we are. A young Ashkenazi Jew is harassed by uglier, bigger, browner Mizrahi Jews outside of school. I think my favorite detail is the lady on the left who's wearing a shirt that just says sex. Just a casual piece that you could find in anyone's wardrobe really. Goes quite
I'm assuming the implication is that the Browns only have one thing on their mind, that's like sex and violence. The amount of videos I have seen, unfortunately, where it's just like some sort of party and people are dancing or just hanging out, and the woman just immediately start like crouching down and twerking their ass, and then a black guy comes up and starts dry humping her, and it's totally fucking normal. Like I've seen it at a kid's birthday party, I've seen it at like a park, it's too many times, too many fucking times, and every time I see that, I'm like, this is fucking disgusting.
Nicely with my foreskin fedora. The piece conveys the idea that Mizrahim are these big ugly ogres that are base in nature, thinking only of their desires, i.e. the sex shirt and the kid pissing on the book about Mozart. These characters are the stereotypical racist caricature of the Mizrahim, which, in Hebrew, are known as arsim, or ars in singular. An ars is someone who is lower class, is loud and obnoxious, wears large gold chains, is usually violent, and they often engage in criminal activity. It's like they basically
So they are Inwas. They are the Jewish Inwas.
recreated black people racism from first principles. It's kind of funny how people will invent this archetype to hate, even when, historically, there's been like maybe one black person in Israel ever. Here's another painting by the same artist. Again, you have this swarthy brown Mizrahi sexually accosting the Aryan-looking blue-eyed Jew.
If it wasn't for the schnoz and the gold chain with the star, I would have been like, okay, that's an Indian man. Hell, even with the schnoz, because there's some like Jewish-looking Indians that exist out there because of the facial structure without that gold chain. This is beautiful. This truly actually is an unironic work of art.
In what looks to be a shawarma shop that she is a waitress of. Here's another cartoon. Again, the noble Torah-studying observant Ashkenazi, surrounded by flowers and bathed in sunlight, compared to the money-grubbing, bald, hook-nosed Mizrahi. It's over for you, Soy Jack. I have depicted myself as the sensitive young Aryan Jew, and you the ugly, obese brown Jew. I could keep going, but I think you get my point. Racism against the Mizrahim was not only on the social level, but it also was institutional. The Israeli Black Panthers were a political movement primarily consisting of Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews in protest of their treatment from the Israeli government. They were based out of the city of Mizrara, and for this to make sense, I have to give you some backstory on the city. It was created in the late 19th century by rich Arab Christians and was an affluent, prosperous area. Then the 1948 Nakba happens, the rich Arab population is forced out of the area, and the new partition lines place Mizrara in Israeli territory. Whilst this was happening, the new state of Israel had a surge of Mizrahi Jewish immigrants and had nowhere to put them, so decided to place all of them in this once prosperous city, and within a single generation, they turned that city into a massive shithole, such that it appeared as if the Israeli government was purposefully putting the Mizrahim in ghettos.
Funny how that works. Every time a foreign, browner species comes in, it just turns into a shithole. It's almost like IQ is correlated to the skin color.
And it is from this city of Mizrara that the Israeli Black Panthers political movement was created. So, politically speaking, what did the Israeli Black Panthers actually do? I'll be honest, they didn't really achieve much of anything. They had low membership and disbanded pretty quickly. So not all too different from their American counterparts. Well, that's not strictly true. The American Black Panthers were not nearly as pathetic as the Israeli Black Panthers, who were famed for stealing milk bottles from Ashkenazim and placing them at Mizrahi doorsteps. Truly the most revolutionary of all political actions. These stereotypes,
As funny as it is to, be racist against the browner Jews, they are still lighter skinned than the Nwas, who have a propensity to be more violent. You have the IQ part, obviously, and you have to have a 90 to 95 IQ to understand 15 seconds ahead, second order consequences. And so when you don't have that IQ level, you can't think about the consequences of your actions just in general. But on top of that too, they have a gene that makes them more violent on average as well. When you add those two things together, you basically have the human version of a pit bull versus the tan hook-nosed creatures instead.
Types of the Mizrahim being ugly brown ogres were formed primarily in the early years of the State of Israel, when the Ashkenazi percentage of the population was a lot higher. Now it's actually flipped, where there are more Mizrahim than there are Ashkenazim. They both still don't really get along, particularly the Haredim, which is the ultra-Orthodox sect of Judaism that basically just studies Torah all day. These guys actually get exemptions from military service, get large religious grants from the government, and don't really have jobs. Like I said, they only really read Torah all day. This is something the Mizrahim are particularly angry about, which means that it's brown people mad at white people for being jobless welfare leeches, which is actually hilarious now that I've said it out loud. Anyway, will this case of intra-race racism ever go away?
No.
Probably
No.
not. Personally, I'm Team Sephardi, as they seem the least insane. Although
I'm team none of the above. It's a pity both sides can't lose situation. I literally do not fucking care what happens in the sandbox. They can go blow each other up and segregate or whatever the case is. It's just important to point out the intra-racism, make people realize how common it actually truly is. I mean, hell, to go back to white people, and there's still racism with white people. You know, the Irish were cast out and were considered the N-was and put in ghettos. Italians were created the mafias and caused a bunch of problems in America. The Germans were heavily discriminated and considered parasites when they started coming over to America as well. And that's like in America specifically. But in Europe, I mean, they've had how many wars for how many centuries with each other because they just didn't like each other. They're all white, very genetically closely related, but because they're from different countries and there's no trains and planes and cars to really talk things out. Southern France is different than Northern France, and then obviously France is different than Germany, and Germany is different than Poland. When you don't have travel and transportation other than horses, you can't really communicate with each other. You're going to self-segregate. You're going to build your own communities. You're going to build your own language. You're going to build your own culture. And then when you interact with the others, even though you share the same skin color, you're not going to like each other because you're so different at that point. It literally just happens, and it's natural. It's okay to be tribal. If you want a more surface level example of tribalism, just look at sports ball. Just look how invested people get in football. And people get so passionate about that. Sometimes fisticuffs occur. It's just because it's your team versus my team. It's that simple.
my favorite rabbi has to be Joseph Mizrahi, because he's just the GOAT.
So technically, according to the strict law of the Torah, not one Gentile in the world deserves to live.
Preach, Mr. Mizrahi. Preach. Mr. Mizrahi once even called the ex-Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, a fake Jew because his mother was a convert.
And on top of everything, we found out this week that his mother is not Jewish, meaning he's not Jewish. Now we understand what's going on over here. He doesn't have a Jewish soul.
To which Bennett immediately sued him, so that cleared up the confusion very quickly.
I do know in Judaism, it's their matriarchy, which explains why there's a bunch of sniveling women and act like it. They refuse to take accountability, and so hence why they sue when this happens. Because it's very important that the mother actually be like legitimately genetically Jewish to them, not just a convert religiously.
Anyway, the next instance of intra-race racism is going to be the caste system of India.
Ah,
oh boy,
that's what I was talking
racism,
about.
Indians and Jews all in one video. What is this? Instagram. India has been full of Indians for about 3,000 years, and for 99% of that time, the only people you would ever see or meet are Indians. Even in the earliest years, some of the Indians realized that not all Indians are created equal, and because of this, in their infinite wisdom, decided to create the caste system.
See, this is what I was talking about based on the caste system being based off race. The proportionate major mtDNA haplogroups and Indian caste and tribal population. So the Brahmins, I don't know what the letters mean, but we can see that the Brahmins only 69%, whatever the M is, and very low percentage of the other ones. Brahmins are the highest caste. And as you go down, you have bigger groups of the kind of the rest.
Equal, and because of this, in their infinite wisdom, decided to create the caste system. So, what is the caste system and what are the castes? I actually studied this in religious studies in school, so I actually am somewhat credible. Officially, there are 4 main castes that are derived from the Vedas, the Indian holy texts. You have the Brahmins, that are the priestly class. They would often be priests or spiritual teachers, but all of them enjoyed high social status and the benefits that came with that status. Next, you have the Kshatriyas, the warrior class. This was the ruling/government class. Often they were the military elites, kings and nobles, and were basically the administration class. Thirdly, there are the Vaishyas. Farm owners, traders, and businessmen fall into this caste. And lastly, we have the Shudras, who are the labourer caste, who usually work as labourers for the businesses of the Vaishyas caste above them. Oh, actually, there is a 5th caste, which is unofficial but is very much treated as a real thing, and that is the Dalits caste,
yes,
who are treated as
Dalits.
untouchables. No, not those untouchables, we're talking about these untouchables. It
Jesus
translates
Christ, they're
to the
dark.
oppressed, which I guess is fitting, because up until very recently, they were only allowed to carry out the most impure of occupations, such as handling the dead, sanitation, scavenging, etc. There are even specific Dalit subcastes for prostitution, whereby almost all women in that caste are basically forced into prostitution to earn a living. These 5 are the main castes, and I'll be honest, the majority of the violent crimes have the victim as the Dalits, and the perpetrator the Shudras or other higher tier castes. Well, actually that's a simplification, because the Shudras is a massive caste that accounts for about 55% of the population of India, so it would be more correct to use specific tribes within castes, but the tribal relationship is the same really. You oppress people below you and get oppressed by those above. Unfortunately for the lower castes, they usually have no serious political or judicial power, so oftentimes the racism and crimes against them go unanswered. For example,
Keep in mind, chat. Keep in mind, the Indians that are being imported into the West, they're all the higher caste. They like the original ones that came like 20 plus years ago. And look how dark they are. And this graph he has, they are like tan, they're lighter skin, they're like pale, or like Italian kind of stuff. And look how much problems they're causing. And the more recent ones in the past like 5 to 10 years, that's gonna be the Castrias, or however you pronounce that thing. And we still have millions of Indians in the West, and they still litter, they still piss and take shits on the ocean beaches, they still scam and have jobs and take the jobs like through the H-1B program. And that's the higher tiers of them. Imagine what would happen. Because keep in mind, the Brahmins came first like 20 plus years ago. And now we're slowly petering down to the Kshatriyas. Imagine another, 20 years of more Indian immigration and how they're going to go to the Vaishyas and then the Shudras. Before you know it, but just imagine how bad things would be then.
example, in the Kilvanmany massacre, 44 Dalit labourers were murdered by a gang of 200 henchmen sent by their landlord over a wage dispute and a strike. At one point, all the women, elderly and children hid in one hut, which was surrounded and set ablaze, killing them all. The attackers then went to the police preemptively, demanding protection, which they were given. It is speculated that this was due to the fact that the police chief and the attackers were all the same caste, and the crime was committed against the lower Dalit caste. Later on, 10 landlords responsible did get charged and found guilty, but the High Court of the area acquitted them not too long after. So, yeah. More recently though, in 2022, a 9-year-old Dalit boy was beaten by his teacher so badly that it eventually led to his death, for the crime of drinking from an upper caste's drinking pot. And I could go on, but the thing is, most of these crimes are local village crimes, so the majority probably don't even make national news in India, never mind international news. So
Bad, I guess, but like at the same time, I still don't really care because it's normal. Would I like us to be all get along? Would I like the caste system to exist? No, if I had a perfect society, that wouldn't happen. But like, it's a foreign country with a foreign problem. I don't really care. I just don't want them here. I don't want them to import their caste system here. I don't want their culture here. I don't want their religion. I don't want their language. I don't want their food. I don't want any of that stuff there. They can go have their caste system in India, just not here in America.
you can never know the true scale of these things. The data even shows that these crimes are becoming more frequent, as in 2018 the number of scheduled caste-based crimes that occurred was 42,747, increasing to 57,428 in 2022. And it's not only in India that this caste-based racism persists. Even in the enlightened West, there are reports of hiring managers discriminating against the lower caste Dalits, proving once again that intra-race racism supersedes any American constitution. The thing about this caste malarkey
And on top of that too, even though they might discriminate against the lower caste, which has definitely happened before, which I mean, I don't really care because I don't want Indians in the workforce regardless. What I do care about though is when they actually hire other Indians because they're Indians within the higher caste instead of actually hiring American. That's why every single tech company within the past 5 years now, as soon as they hire some Indian and the higher levels, they immediately start replacing them the American workers with other Indian. This happened with Google, Microsoft, Apple, a bunch of AI stuff. Every single tech giant has had this problem where as soon as you start hiring them, they have the Indian nepotism. Sorry, but I want to live in a meritocracy, not an Indian fucking nepotism bullshit.
In India is that they are simultaneously extremely proud about it to the point of killing someone over it, whilst also claiming that it doesn't exist and is just a bunch of racist nonsense. And not too long ago on Twitter, a lot of Indian accounts were making these fake caste posts about the Chinese. I think my favourite has to be this one where they clearly just reused this anti-Indian meme, but also it doesn't really work because I have never heard a Chinese person say "sar" in my life. These posts are Indians trying to allude that the Chinese have a similar oppressive system when really they don't. But in doing so, they basically admit that the Indian caste system is both real and oppressive.
Chinese are racist. They don't have the same caste system, but they are racist and they do discriminate. China is a massive country. The city does heavily discriminate against the rural areas. The rural areas are extremely backwards and far, far behind. Or a lot of places don't even have like running water. It's a night and day difference between rural China versus the cities in China. That's its own different problem with its own different racial differences because it's its own different country. I don't like the Chinese. I might like my gotcha slop, right? But I think the Chinese are at least a little bit better. Just a little bit better. And they're different too. Because believe it or not, who could have guessed it? That people from different countries and different cultures with different languages and different food and different fucking people don't have the same system. Because they're different. We're all not just one blank slate. We all are not just interchangeable cogs in a machine. I could have never have guessed that.
You can tell that this is the case because of how defensive of it they get. A real classic case of one doth protest too much, thanks, yeehaw. And finally, we have our last case of intra-race racism, and that will be the Nigerian. Wow, racism Jews in... Now, the intra-race racism of Nigerians isn't as...
This is okay. Yeah, that was beautiful. That was yeah. I don't know if I could have gotten away with that. I would have let it slip. So I don't know about Nigerians once again specifically, but I wonder if it's gonna be similar to what I said about how Africans are racist to each other. So I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious here.
Extreme as the other two, but it still plays a major role and could be used to help fuel a civil war. The three main ethnic groups in Nigeria are the Hausa in northern Nigeria. They make up around 25% of the population and are majority Muslim. The Igbo in southeastern Nigeria, who are majority Christian and make up around 18% of the population, and the Yoruba in southwestern Nigeria, who are a mix of both religions and make up 18% of the population. And the rest of the population are a mix of other smaller groups. The Yoruba...
A mix of the religion. Huh. I mean, I can see the compatibility since they're both Abrahamic religions. Kind of curious where the mix actually happens. Do we kill all the infidels? Or do we not?
are basically the butt of the jokes in Nigerian politics. You know how you have an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman walk into a bar joke? Well, it's the same with the Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. The Yoruba are stereotyped as the dumber of the three, being purely materialistic womanizers as well as demon worshippers, because they, unlike the other two, still adhere to some older Yoruban African religion. That's why sometimes Nigerian scammers will say "Ogun kill you" when you catch that they are trying to scam you. If that ever happens, just reply "Mugu, thunder fire your peasant village," and they'll get pretty mad.
What?
They also have a strange fascination with iPhones, and they're sometimes referred to as Yoruba baboons as an insult, which I have to say is pretty creative. Igbo, on the other hand, are seen as the opposite of womanizers, generally stereotyped as richer and more simp-like. They also strangely have this stereotype of having the default Igbo-shaped head. Glory be, Yakub has returned. Apparently it's because a lot of Igbo dishes feature tough dried meat, as well as being genetically predisposed to having large larger temporalis muscles, which means that they can do stuff like this.
I am too racist for this segment of the video. I want to say lots of things. He still has to explain the third one, but I do find it funny that the Christian ones are considered richer and better off. Just funny how that works. Where every single caste system and tier, no matter where you go in the world, always prioritize lighter skin. It's funny how that happens.
All right, guys, dinner is ready.
That's a person? Hold on. Wait a second. Hold on. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh. How do you breed with that? This is literally Yakub, except Yakub got smashed somehow. Maybe I can keep Amalgamyte on for the rest of the video. How about that?
That is the iconic default Igbo head shape. Sometimes they're referred to as Igbopotamus because of this head shape, which again is another very creative insult. The Hausa are stereotyped as always having multiple wives and being Hausa bike riders that drive recklessly. Other than that, it's mostly just social rivalry between the Igbo and Yoruba. Politically though, the Hausa and Igbo were on opposite sides of a civil war in 1967, leading to the deaths of millions of Nigerians. In January 1966, a military coup consisting of mostly Igbo leadership took over the Nigerian government. Shortly after, in July 1966, a counter-coup of mostly Hausa Fulani are a separate, smaller tribe but are very politically aligned with the Hausa, counter-couped the coup. The counter-coup occurred because in the initial coup, people feared it would lead to total Igbo political power.
He's using the word coup too many times. I'm losing track of who cooed who. Coup. You all belong in the insane asylum in Nigeria if they can manage to build one.
Afterwards, the counter-coup decided to massacre the Igbo in the northern region, killing thousands of civilians. This then led to the declaration of the Independent Republic of Biafra of the mostly Igbo eastern region by Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. Immediately, the Nigerian federal government declared war and invaded and blockaded the secessionary state. The result was 3 years of fighting that led to famines that killed around 3 million people. The Yoruba in all of this kinda played both sides, but mainly were pro the Nigerian government. Anyway, where does that leave us now? Biafra secessionists, mostly Igbo, now refer to themselves as the Biafra Republic Government in Exile, Bergies, and are petitioning the US government to basically get involved. It started in 2024 when the...
No. I mean, as far as I'm aware, Trump hasn't done anything yet, which is good. But I swear to fucking God, if we do anything to help the fucking Africans, I will be leading my own coup.
Bergie paid former Congressman Jim Moran $10,000 per month to lend a voice to the Biafran people, to President Donald Trump designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern due to the recent killing of Nigerian Christians in the region.
This one pissed me off because, listen, no offense to the Christians in chat. I know I'm coming from a place of privilege myself. I'm preaching unfairly to the choir because of the fact that I'm agnostic. But like, I fucking hate with a burning passion this whole, oh, but the Christians in Nigeria, they're being persecuted. These Christians are not the same Christians as the West. They might have the cross, okay? They might say Jesus and whatever, but like they're not the same. They don't actually practice the same. Because they're from a different culture that has somewhat assimilated it into the religion into it, and so it's not going to be the same. And they're completely different people with completely different IQ, with completely different ways of handling things. They're not the same Christians in Germany and in France, okay, and in America. You can't save them. They're still foreigners. Focus on your own fucking country first and your own people, your own brethren.
In return, the Biafran government has promised lucrative mineral and oil deals in the Niger Delta, which is the most resource-rich part of Nigeria and would be included in the Biafran state, to US companies, as well as permanent US military bases and free CIA operations in the area. Personally, I don't think the US will support the Bergie in any meaningful way, but if they do actually pursue Biafran secession, the resulting civil war would lead to hundreds of thousands of deaths and millions of Nigerian refugees probably headed to America and Europe, which, you know,
we do not need more of them. Refugees is like a relatively new status. Before in the past, you could have Germans fleeing to France during wartime, but like that was very far and few between because it was an arduous journey and they were still heavily discriminated against. But it's not the Western world's job. It's not America's job to take in every single war-torn shithole country. Because if you come here, you're gonna turn us into a war-torn shithole country. You already see that. And the ghettos, like Minnesota, for example, the Somalia Somalian discrimination that happens there. Well, not because the Somalians themselves are getting discriminated. The discrimination they're putting against the actual native Minnesotan, the Haitians, the Indians, and their caste system once again. They do not assimilate. Assimilation is a myth. They come over here. They bring everything that's awful about them. Why is our problem that it's their original country's a shithole and they can't make it better just because because we actually created something good? That's not our responsibility.
Doesn't sound particularly great. And with a population of over 200 million in Nigeria, that's probably on the lower end of the scale. But anyway, that's the current state of intra-race racism in Nigeria. So what's the lesson we learned today? It's that true racists can even find differences when looking in a mirror. Poetic in a way. But anyway, that's all we have for today's video. If you liked the video, consider liking and subscribing. But other than that, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye.
Awkward endings. That's my kind of person. No, but that was a really good video. Explained it pretty succinctly how the races are different with the inter-racism by giving multiple different examples from all over the world. And so yeah, he did a really good job about that without being too spicy. It's a miracle that it's still up on YouTube though, but he did a good job. So make sure you give it a like, maybe throw a comment in there for the algorithm.